You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Hey everyone, I'm Rod Roddenberry, and you're listening to Trek FM.
Are you taking all these books?
I thought I'd take some light reading, in case I got bored.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Treks, TFM's dedicated books and comics show. My name is Casey Pettitt, and with me, as he always is the wonderful, the idea-filled Jonathan Koan. I say idea-filled because we were just talking about that off the air.
Yes, many ideas. None of them will happen, but many ideas we have.
Well, yeah, we were just talking and ruminating if we were running the gallery books, I guess now, not pocketbooks, but what we'd want to see with Star Trek books. But that's not what today's episode is about. We actually have David Mack lined up to talk with us today about his newest book, Ring of Fire. I'm super excited about that. And I guess in the meantime, how about Jonathan? Why don't you tell everybody how they can get in contact with us?
Well, you can find all our shows by going to our website, Trek.fm. And you can follow us on X and Instagram at TrekFM. And you can find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/TrekFM. While you're there, join our listeners-only group, the Babel Conference. Just go to the Facebook search field and type in BABEL, and it should come right up. We also have a Goodreads group for literary treks. Join us there, and you can see the books we've read and even what's coming next. If you'd like to support the network, please go to patreon.com/TrekFM, where you can select from any number of tiers. And if you have a show you really enjoy, you can be an associate producer like Casey Pettitt and Greg Rozier are for Literary Treks. Lastly, please leave us a star rating and a written review wherever you get your podcasts. It's great for us and also helps others find the show.
You know, I was just thinking about our Goodreads group, and we've got a book, I believe, on the bookshelf in there for an upcoming book that we were going to do, I think, last month or something.
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot about that.
No, it's fine.
We're still going to do it.
Yes, we're still going to do it. We're talking about Star Trek Voyager's Pathways, and it's just, gosh darn it, we've had too many new books coming out and interviews to do. So,
might be sometime in 2026,
yeah,
but we still want to do it.
Yeah, I still want to do it. It's just, we got a lot of books coming out. And speaking of which, one of the books that's coming out, nice, remind me, this is coming out in March?
February, I believe.
Yeah, early 2026, we got a new book from Dayton Ward in the Star Trek Picard universe called To Defy Fate, which we've already announced that. That's should be old news for everybody. If it's not, congratulations, you just learned about a new book coming out. But
well, what's real big is the cover.
The cover. And I have thoughts, and
me too.
I guess I would say not good or bad thoughts. I just have thoughts, like questions. Ooh. Yeah, if you haven't seen the cover, go out and check it out. Just Google Star Trek To Defy Fate, and you'll see the cover there. And when I first saw it, I think it was even before Dayton posted it on his socials. I don't remember where I saw it. I think in just some Star Trek
it almost always leaks.
They
always
was on
leak it.
Yeah, in Facebook somewhere. But I thought it was more of just I thought it was a plaplaceholder, because it does not look like your typical Star Trek novel
Picard
cover,
specifically,
especially for Picard.
They're switching it up.
They are switching it up, but we've got kind of a Earth, on the bottom, and then there's kind of this cracked screen with somebody coming through what kind of looks like a wormhole, and it's interesting because it looks like a young Dr. Crusher, but it's just a silhouette, so we can't really tell who it is. And then behind all this shattered glass, we've got Raffi, Jean-Luc, Will Crusher, or not Will Crusher, Wesley Crusher.
Will Crusher.
That's, Will Wheaton, Wesley Crusher.
Wesley Wheaton.
Wesley Wheaton. and then 7 and current day Picard era Dr. Crusher. And I don't know. It's got this is clearly taking place after the show, after the season 3 of Picard, because you got Raffi and 7 both in their Starfleet uniforms.
Well, I believe I read that it's not after the show, it's in that year. So you remember at the end of this is super nerdy, the end of Star Trek Picard, you have the scene where they're turning out the lights on the Enterprise D, and then the next scene is them flying into the hangar. Yeah. There's a year in between that happening. And right. This is happening in that year. As far as I understand.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Because then
And so that's why I think that they're in the Starfleet uniforms.
Gotcha.
But I'll say this: like I'm not as plugged into some of the Facebook groups or Twitter groups and whatnot for Star Trek books. But I have a lot of friends in the Star Trek book space, and this is the buzziest a Star Trek book announcement has been for Trek, I would say, since we had the Coda trilogy.
Yeah.
It's not as buzzy as that, but the biggest one since then, because I saw so many people who, they read the books, Star Trek books, but they're not, day one readers or anything. They were day one, like, we're going to get this one, and it's really excited. And I think it's partially because, the questions behind Star Trek Legacy, but also there's the questions of what's Wesley Crusher, the Traveler doing on because he's barely in the books ever.
Yeah.
And then we've got the questions of how are they going to handle all these characters and seeing them that we saw the flashbacks of 7 from Firewall,
right? But
we haven't gotten a story, in this era since Picard season 3, which is one of the biggest moments of Star Trek recently. So I'm really excited, not just because, of course, I want to read the book, but also because I'm excited that the fandom's excited for this book.
Yes. I mean, it's always great when we get a new Star Trek book, and it's even better when people are talking about it beforehand. And especially Star Trek Picard. I mean, a lot of us grew up in the Next Generation era, or that's a lot of people's Star Trek. And kind of youngish, the middle generations, the millennials, I guess, if I'm going to name it. But when you got like Strange New Worlds or Discovery that kind of take place back in the original series era. I mean, it's new Star Trek, but taking place back then. Now we're getting, stories set in the post DS9 Voyager Nemesis era. And so that show's been off. Picard's been like season 3 was 2023. Yeah.
So this will be, and that was like early 23. So this will be about 3 years since,
since we've
February
seen
26th.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we've seen 7 since then, but again, that was
right.
that was
earlier in the timeline.
Yeah, earlier in the timeline. So, very curious, and again, with all of our current Star Trek authors, it's in good hands with Dayton. But just and he does good with some of the timey-wimey stuff too. Dayton does.
He does, but we'll have to let him out of the green room. So
yeah, he can stay in there until it comes out. Then we'll let him out and talk to him. But yeah, so I don't know. Do you like? It's been a long time on literary treks. I don't think we've ever done. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever done it. But Matthew and Chris years and years ago used to do the stamp of approval on the covers of books, or not. If they didn't like it. What do you think about the actual? Would you, if you're judging this book by its cover, do you give it a stamp of approval?
Well, for me, I'm pretty simple in one way. I will always take a painted cover over a photoshopped cover any day of the week. And not to say that the Photoshop covers where they have images of the cast standing in, lines or in poster frame, they seem to be doing a lot of the poster design for a lot of the covers, which isn't bad, but a painting always wins out for me, and this one is one of the best paintings we've gotten in a while, so absolutely gets the stamp of approval from me.
Yes, I would wholeheartely agree with that. The covers are always nice, but I would say the Dark Veil, that's got Riker and Troy on it.
This is on that level.
you liked that one. I was going to say I didn't like that one as much because it looked like a Photoshop that they just kind of altered a little bit. I thought.
Well, my problem with that one is it didn't match the rest of the series.
Actually, okay, yeah, there's
that you had
it's just jarring.
Photoshop and then painting, and then you basically had Photoshop a bunch in a row.
Yeah.
So it was an outlier, and now it's no longer an outlier.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay, yes, I retract my comment about the Dark Feather. All right. Well, before we get to David, we do have a couple comics to talk about. We talked last time about the lore war, and we have a wrap-up issue called Omega that is really just an epilogue to the whole series and really to the lore war in general that I now, in hindsight, kind of wish we'd have read last time because it would have made more sense.
It really just should have been like, if that was I forgot, was that 5 or 6 parts? But if that was 5 parts, this should have been part 6. Like, this should have just been, instead of an epilogue that's separated, it should have just been Lore War part 6.
Yeah. I guess when I saw it, and saw the cover and everything, I just assumed it was like a big epic one shot. And it's really just, the way I kind of put it in my notes here is just kind of ho-hum. Honestly, it's just like, meh. It's a decent enough epilogue to the series. It wraps most everything up pretty nicely. It does leave a few open things just in case they ever want to come back and revisit like these particular characters, like from these the Star Trek and Star Trek Defiance series. But in some ways, this issue felt like an afterthought. Like, oh crap, we need to
tie up some
bow on some of this. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was nice enough. It was interesting how certain characters got pages and pages, and then there was like a character who got like a page, and then at one point they got like 4 panes, and each pane was wrapping up a storyline for a different character. It was like, all right, we are really just trying to we have to fit it in now. We spent too much time on Cisco, too much time on Picard. Which, by the way, I don't know if you felt this. The image for Picard was weird on this one. When he came in, I was just like, "That's supposed to be Picard."
And what's funny is throughout most of this issue, I thought, "Wow, the artwork is actually pretty good." Like I liked the artwork
overall. It was,
and then there was a couple pretty jarring spots, but yeah. So if you've been reading along through all of these, mini arcs that they've had throughout these couple comic book series, I definitely think giving Omega a read is good. It'll tie a bow on those things, and you'll be all set to just put it behind you. The other one that we are talking about actually came out, I realized, at the beginning of 2025. We just kind of missed it amongst all the other comic books that we were doing as part of the series. And I think I originally thought this was going to be a new series, but it's Section 31, and it's called Emperor Born. And I will say I actually did kind of like this one. I liked it in that I actually wished that they had added these scenes basically to the movie. I think it would have helped flesh the movie out a little bit better. Just because the character of San, as portrayed in the movie, just kind of came out of nowhere and felt like this weird thing that they just added in there to add some emotion. And I felt like this one shot really just led into that, I guess, a little bit better on their relationship and their friendship. And it ends on a heck of a cliffhanger that just makes you want to go watch the movie. No, it doesn't. I mean, it does end on a cliffhanger, but I had no desire to watch the movie again after this.
It was such a full transparency. I have not seen the movie yet. I say yet, but as if I have not seen the movie. But from my perspective, reading it, it was like they tried to do the frame story thing, where they have the first page and the last page is from Georgiou's perspective, and she's in her club, and she's like telling her backstory, and she says, "I'm going to tell you my whole backstory," and then you get this one little snippet of her backstory. You get the you get this time when she's like at the Emperor's Training Academy.
Yeah.
And
how she became emperor.
How she became emperor. Which, first of all, I'm like, this is how y'all choose your emperor? It's like, I have questions on that. But that being said, and then it ends, and she's like, I'll have to keep telling you the story. And then it says, see the story continue in Section 31, the movie. And I was thinking, you know what? Like, I would have preferred they not have the frame. They did the frame for marketing purposes to tie it in with the movie. I would have preferred they just tell a story and maybe not make it one shot. This is a time I'm like, hey, I would have liked more comics. Yeah. I would have liked them to stretch this out and seen a whole comic of like the maybe do a 3 or 4 issues where the first issue starts with them doing the eliminations or something, coming to the thing, and the first people die. And then the second issue is about her making those friends with those people and being curious about San. And then the third issue about her relationship with San, and then the fourth issue of her becoming the emperor. Yeah. Like, that, I think, would have flowed better, but they tried to do it all in this one comic, and it just was so compressed. And I was like, hey, I'm actually liking this. Give me more. Yeah. Not enough more that I want to watch the movie, but give me more in the comic.
Well, that's the thing, too, is like, I mean, I have the benefit anyways of hindsight. I'm sure you've heard enough about how people thought of it, but I guess the other thing too for me is like there's no Section 31 in this. I mean, presumably the person who she's talking to at the beginning, and I have no recollection of who that was. Like I assume it's somebody we see it in the movie, but I really don't remember. But
I don't remember.
We see that place, like this restaurant, bar, casino, whatever it is that she's at that she owns. It's like, I think that's on a ship or something, and we see that in the movie and everything. But yeah, I wanted, and I guess I don't care as much for the Section 31 like tag on it, just because that's what the movie was called. But even the movie, I argue, was very little actual Section 31. But keep digressing here. But this isn't meant to just bash the movie, because I did like this comic actually. Like I liked seeing this background, and like you, I wanted to see more. And this is one of those kind of rare situations where I think, oh, you should have spread this out further, and even. Because I guess that was the other thing too with that framing story. Like, I didn't really ever understand why she was telling this story. It's like, the person said something to her. She's like, "Well, here's my story." It's like, what? Really, just like that? Like, I would think too that Georgiou would kind of keep some of that stuff pretty close to her and not reveal. I mean, we didn't know about that throughout Discovery or the Section 31 movie. But
and she just, oh, hello, let me tell you this really important detail of my backstory. And I'm like, wow, okay.
It's like the artwork was nice too. Like, it was just pretty well done comic, and they just should have done more. And lost the framing story, and then by the end issue they could have said like, okay, here's how we're leading it right into the movie or whatever. So. I don't know. But yeah, if you were one of the few people that enjoyed the movie, you probably really enjoy this comic. And even if you didn't enjoy it, I'd say, maybe give it a shot. It adds just a hair to the movie. a hair in a good way, not a hair like a hair in your soup. The way I'm just going to stop there. So, and with that, we have completed this round of news items and comics. Yeah. And we're ready to kind of go jump through that Ring of Fire with David. Well, it is our pleasure once again to welcome back in the second time in just a couple episodes the New York Times bestselling author David Mack here to talk about his new book, Ring of Fire. Welcome back, David.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, well, yeah, it's always a pleasure. And, before we get into this, I think Jonathan and I were just saying, and I hope everybody else who's read this agrees, that this is probably one of the best Star Trek books to come out in quite a while. No offense to any of the other authors, but man, this one was just kicked right into high gear.
Oh,
I agree.
You.
Yes. Well, and I guess before we really get too far into it, I guess I just wanted to give you an opportunity, David, to reflect on working with the late Margaret Clark, who passed away earlier this year. You've written about working with her on your social media and also in the acknowledgments to this book, but just wanted to, if you would like to, just talk about her and working with her for a few minutes, since she was so prolific within the Star Trek world from the editing standpoint.
Margaret was a lot more important behind the scenes than I think a lot of readers and fans realize, especially as it came to Star Trek comic books in the 90s and then the Star Trek books in the mid-90s to the present day. Margaret was always a big Star Trek fan. She knew Star Trek continuity like very few people ever did. And she started out, I believe, with Marvel and maybe DC. She was working on the Star Trek comic books. And she moved from there over to Pocket Books sometime around 1995, I believe, which is around the same time I started writing for Star Trek on TV. And so she was working with the team at Simon & Schuster. As it turns out, in the year 2000, Margaret was the first editor to ever buy a book from me. She wasn't the line editor on the book. That was Jessica McGivney. So Jessica McGivney was my editor in terms of acquisition, but the one who handled the deal and issued the contract and made the decision to sign off on it, that was Margaret. And over the course of the last 25 years, I've written quite a few Star Trek novels, 32 at this point, published. And 3/4 of them I wrote with Margaret. She was my editor on 75% of the books I wrote for Star Trek over the years. So between the fact that we spent all that time working together and the fact that we would sometimes carpool to and from conventions in the Northeast and see each other at social functions and whatnot, Margaret and I got to be friends as well as coworkers. And we had a very easy rapport. We understood each other very well. When I would see that it would be her calling, I knew that she would always sort of greet me the same way. She had sort of a strange sing-song quality. She would always say my full name in greeting, Dave Mack. She would say it like that. And it was just the strangest, most charming thing. She was, as some of my friends like to say, an odd duck. But she was great to work with. And we developed a lot of great stories together. She was very demanding as an editor. She really just wanted to push us all to do our best, be our best, push a lot of us out of our comfort zones, which, a good editor does. And that was something she had in common with Marco Palmieri. And Margaret was the editor on the last book of mine that she read, that she, got to help shepherd into existence, was my Star Trek Picard novel, Firewall. And I wasn't sure at first when she, asked me to write it. I wasn't sure I was the right guy, considering what we knew about Seven's character at that point and what kind of story it was likely to be. But Margaret said, I have faith in you. I think that you can dig in. I think you're going to find what you need to find to tell this. And she was right. And it turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done. And then she commissioned this story from me because she knew that I really enjoy Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That I was a big fan of it. I'd been pestering her about writing a Strange New Worlds book ever since we knew the series was coming down the pardon the pun Pike. But it took a few years to get my name into the pipeline and get to the top of the queue for this one. And so it finally came about. She commissioned the story. I came up with something I liked. She liked it. We sort of batted it around, polished it up. She gave me the approval to go forward. I wrote the manuscript. I turned in the manuscript a couple of weeks ahead of my deadline and was waiting for her response. Usually when I would turn it in, at the very least right away, she would send an email that says, received, I'll look at it soon. This time there was no acknowledgement of receipt, and I found that a bit odd. And then as I started to inquire and talk to some of the other authors and some of the other editors, about 2 weeks later, I discovered the reason she hadn't responded was that she had succumbed to a very swift-moving illness that had just incapacitated her and put her in the hospital. And it just sort of took us all by surprise. Nobody saw it coming. It's not like the kind of thing you can predict. It was just one of those things where it comes out of nowhere. It hits you. It's bad luck. And once you got it, you're done. And it took her down very quickly. I and a couple of other people who had worked with Margaret had hoped that we might be able to get out to Eastern Long Island, where she was hospitalized near her family. Even though she lived in New York City, she had to be hospitalized closer to where her kin were. And so it was very difficult for those of us who don't have cars to get out there. We were trying to work out the logistics and the timing. And before we could actually plan a visit and get to the hospital to see her, she was gone. It happened very fast. She passed away on March 15 of this year. And it was just the sort of thing that just hits you like a gut punch. You don't see it coming, and then suddenly it happens, and you're left wondering, well, what do I do now? And so this book that she commissioned from me, she never got to read it. She never got to see how it turned out. I'll always wonder what she would have thought of it, what she would have enjoyed, what she might have asked me to change. I'll never know. But obviously, I ended up dedicating the book to her and to the memory of Peter David. And in the acknowledgments, I also acknowledged the passing of Star Trek author Peter Morwood, who was the husband of Diane Duane. And so we lost 3 members of the Star Trek literary family in very quick succession this year, and it was just a heck of a year. And in some respects, I'm thinking about all of those sort of things as I start work on my next book. So I'll be keeping those sort of thoughts in mind.
Yeah. That was great that you got to work with her for so long, and, she's kind of, leaving her legacy with you and the other authors that she's worked with, both in the books that have been published, but also, I'm sure you guys will be keeping her in mind as you move forward and, working with, the new editors and everything. But,
But we got lucky in that the new line acquisitions editor, still operating on a freelance basis like she did, is our copy editor for the last several years, Scott Pearson.
Yeah.
He moved up and is now the acquiring editor for the line, which is great. He's, again, deep knowledge Star Trek fan, just like Margaret was. And taking over his responsibilities as copy editor, they have some long-term copy editors that they've employed through the production department. But for this book, for the Strange New Worlds book, they brought back former Star Trek editor Marco Palmieri.
Really?
He used to be my line editor. This time he was my copy editor.
Oh.
So after I've gone through all the line edits with Scott, I get my copy edit queries from Marco. And that's something I haven't had in years. I haven't worked with Marco on, getting notes on a manuscript since something like 2016, 2017.
Wow,
yeah. It's been almost a decade since I've had editorial feedback of any kind on anything from Marco. We put together some pitches on some audio drama stuff that ended up not being made a few years ago, but this was different. This was like an actual project in progress.
Right.
So that was fun. I don't know if he'll continue to be the copy editor. I don't know if he'll be working on any more of my books or anybody else's books, but it was fun just to sort of welcome back an old friend in that capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blast from past.
Very much so. Very much.
So this story is set of Ring of Fire is set between during episodes of season 3 of Strange New Worlds. And I believe you've only done one other book that was set or written during the show's run, which was Discovery Desperate Hours, but that was also takes place before the events of the show. And with the show still running, how do you go about crafting, the story to fit the confines of what's going on the air, but also not mess up anything, and also try to be original at the same time? How do you balance all that?
Well, like they say, I knew it was a dangerous job when I took it. I have in the past, and will again, liken the process to trying to repair a car engine while it's running. It's very much what it feels like. Part of what helped this process along was that I was given all of the scripts, the final draft scripts for season 3 at the beginning of my story development process, so that I could see what the story arcs were going to be in the coming season, so that I could see how the stories were executed, so I could see all the story details. And then that way I could sort of figure out continuity-wise where there might be a usable gap in their timeline where I could drop a story in. And then also at the same time, once I figured out chronologically where I want to situate the story. I can then look at what story threads of the season were in process at that time, and sort of say, okay, I need to set this up, but this has not happened yet. I can foreshadow this, but I have to mention that. And so that was the first step, figuring out when in the season to set it. The second task then was to figure out what the character arcs were, and that, what I could work with. And then I found some great stuff in the script, actually, for episode 3-7, What is Starfleet? They wrote and filmed a lot more of those talking head interviews than ended up being used in the episode. They filmed a lot and then they cut it down. But it was all scripted. So I had some of that stuff that they scripted, shot, but didn't use. And I was able to take some of that stuff from the Pike storyline, from his talking head interviews, and I used that to build Pike's story, specifically his youthful backstory about the horse. That comes from those interviews that were scripted for episode 3-7, What is Starfleet? And then once I had that, and I sort of knew where the Spock-La'an relationship was going to be in terms of, their arc of personal weirdness and awkwardness, and how it was going to be affecting Chapel at that point. And I knew I had to write Battelle out because she had no place in the story and was absent from the ship during some of the stuff that we saw going on. So I'm like, all right, so I got to work around that. Then the task was, okay, so what is the general story? And I knew going in that my big inspiration was a real life event known as Project Azorian. And that was a CIA operation back in the 1970s, 1974, I believe. What had happened was a Russian nuclear submarine, K-129, had gone down somewhere in the North Pacific. The U.S. knew where it was because they had an underwater sonar system called SOSUS, and with it they could triangulate sounds, and they were able to figure out where the sub had gone down. They found it before the Russians did. And they wanted to get to it because they wanted to study the current state of Russian nuclear sub technology. Problem is, it was in deep water, like really deep water. So they came up with a plan for what would it take to lift this wreck off the seabed, off the seafloor, and get it up to somewhere where we can study it. Very ambitious undertaking. And the biggest problem with it is, if anybody realizes what you're doing, it's going to be a massive international incident, and it could actually spark a war. So you've got to come up with another story. And the story was that the big machine they had sent out into the middle of the North Pacific, which was called the Hughes Glomar Explorer, the explanation was that it was a test bed for mining the seabed for rare earth minerals and also looking for oil in deep sea areas that hadn't been previously accessible to drilling. That was the cover story. And it was funded by Howard Hughes. They ran it through him. So there was a completely civilian facade. There was no obvious government involvement in the Hughes Glomar Explorer. It looked like a commercial enterprise. So people figured, well, Hughes is crazy. This looks like the sort of stupidity he would invest his money in, the sort of pipe dream. Good luck, Mr. Hughes. Have fun. Very few people suspected what was really going on with the Glomar Explorer. Their mission was only partly successful. They started to they found the wreck, they started to raise it, and unfortunately they miscalculated on a couple of details and actually ended up breaking the thing in half. And then the wreckage fell back to the ocean floor, and that was pretty much that. They only recovered a few small bits of it that they were able to bring up and study, and they had to eventually end up owning what they did. They had to repatriate the bodies of the sailors to the Soviet Union because technically aboard a ship that goes down at sea is technically hallowed ground. It's a burial ground. Mm-hmm. It's a cemetery plot for everybody who dies in the ship. That's their cemetery plot, and if you disturb it, that's considered a pretty serious offense. So reparations had to be made, bodies had to be repatriated to the Soviet Union. They got some of the intel they wanted out of the process. It wasn't entirely successful, but it wasn't completely a failure either. I found the whole story just fascinating. I knew I didn't want to do it beat for beat. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to just do that story in Star Trek, but I found the concepts that it brought to mind. I was like, I can build something from this inspiration. And so the story of the Hughes Glomar explorer trying to raise K-129 wound up informing the core plot of Cathara Station and what it's doing above the accretion disk of the black hole Marbus. And that's where that all came from. And then I wove it all together. This backstory, I tied that into Pike's backstory. And then that story I made sure had thematic echoes in the story about the horse, because I saw the ability to basically build this through line for Pike that goes all the way back to his youth, all the way up to the present day. He keeps making these bad decisions in an attempt to, curry favor with or gain the approval of superiors. And he's got to stop doing that. And he's also got to learn to forgive himself for things that weren't really his fault. Just as Valkyria needs to learn to forgive herself for things that weren't really her fault. And so on and so forth. So there's parallels between the two of them. They were both third in command on their ship. They were both standing on night watch when the whole thing went down. So it's finding character parallels, thematic parallels, and then just building them all out. And that was pretty much how the concept work came together on Ring of Fire.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was kind of wondering how you came up with that story. So that's really fascinating to hear that background, and really does add a lot of context to the story then too. And I think as far as the story goes, I mean, we a lot of times focus just on the captain, like Captain Pike or whatever. But I felt like that this book was truly an ensemble piece that. We do have, like, Pike probably had the biggest storyline and so those things that you were talking about with him dealing with. But, I feel like we also get with some of the other characters, I feel like Chin Riley's got kind of a little bit of the short shrift on the show because there's so many other characters to focus on. And so we've only gotten to dive a little bit into her Illyrian background, but she gets some time to shine here, as does Ortegas, both of them kind of in a number one role. Chin Riley more as the number one who's going to lead the landing party or away mission or whatever on the station, but then Ortega's taken over as number one for Pike on the ship. And it was at first it was almost kind of jarring with Ortega's like, really, she's gonna be the number one, but
by rank she is in the line of succession.
Yeah, and I mean, and Scotty, wore red, and he was, I think, next in line after Spock too. So that that worked too.
Yeah, technically, Scotty was third in command by the time of TOS.
But by that point, But it just felt natural, I guess, for Ortegas. She really, she's another one that we haven't gotten a ton of screen time. We did, more in season 3 than before, but she just really, I don't know, it felt natural for her, to be kind of in this command role, which we haven't really seen before from her.
But I think they've hinted at it on the show that she is a character of great potential that has not yet fully blossomed into that potential. One of the great things about a novel, as opposed to, say, a TV script, is I've got a lot more room to work. I have time to do side bits and make sure that every character gets to contribute in some way to the resolution of the story or the advancement of the plot. Even if in just a small way, everybody gets to have their hand in. So Uhura is part of tracking down some of the spies, by finding and triangulating their signals and working with Sam Kirk. So she and Sam Kirk get to do something. Ortegas gets to fill in as acting XO, but when the time comes, she also gets to pilot the ship during the rescue operation. We see that, Mbenga has his role to play during the autopsy, but also as a confidant to Chapel later on, and also as a helper to Scotty. Scotty and Pelia have their whole arc, which is there for comic relief. Then back on the station, we have the whole sort of triangular story arc involving Chapel, La'an, and Spock, where Chapel's subtext is that she's worried she's messed up her friendship with Spock, and that they're not going to have the same level of trust and intimacy as friends that they used to have, and she's worried she's lost that. La'an is feeling put upon, like her independence is being encroached upon, because Spock suddenly seems to want this degree of commitment or involvement that she's never really had before, and she's not sure she wants to give it, but she's also not sure she wants to risk throwing away what she has. So she's in a position, she doesn't know how to accept what's being offered, but she doesn't want to risk losing it. And then you have Spock, who is still in this phase of his life where he is exploring the human half of his identity. He's trying to understand his emotions so that later in life we can see that he learns how to better control them. He learns to master his inner life, but to do that, he first has to get to know his inner life. And that's the phase of where he is in terms of his emotional and social development during this era of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. He's exploring his human half and the desires that come with it, the needs for intimacy, the desire for sort of romantic feedback, sort of a level playing field, if you will, in a relationship. And he wants to make this connection, but he doesn't know how. So he ends up turning for advice to somebody who makes the ridiculous suggestion that he leave behind a pair of socks in a drawer in her quarters, which he does. And this was, of course, inspired by the fact that at the end of episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans, when La'an is talking to Chin Riley, and Chin Riley is saying, okay, so what's going on with you and Spock? What made it weird? And La'an has to explain that what made it weird is that at some point very recently she discovered that Spock had left socks in her quarters. And Chin Riley is like, what, dirty socks? She goes, no, clean socks in a drawer. Are we those people? He's leaving socks in a drawer? It's like suddenly it's like he's left behind this token where he's like sort of tacitly claiming this little bit of intimate space, an otherwise empty drawer, and he's put his clean pair of socks in there. It's like planting a flag, and she doesn't know what to do with that, and now she's freaked out. He thinks that this is going to be some grand gesture that she'll understand because it comes from her culture, when in fact he's just weirding her out completely. And again, that's a little bit where I find this great little bit in an episode, and I set up, and now you can see the completely logical chain of thought and series of events and motivations that led Spock to do this. Mm-hmm. He did it with, it was very clearly thought out. It made sense to him. It met his emotional need, and it seemed logical at the same time. He was assured that this was the proper thing to do. We see the motivations, we see the setup, and of course the joke is, if we've already seen the season, we know how that's going to work out.
Yeah.
But he's so happy with himself as he puts the socks on the drawer. He's so happy.
He's so proud of himself.
He's so proud of himself. And you got to think, oh, you poor bastard.
Yeah.
You poor Vulcan bastard.
Well, I did want to ask about the mystery of the book, because you told us kind of the bones of the story where you got it from. But the mystery was so interesting because you had not just the mystery of the station, but it ties into, and we're kind of going to delve into some spoilers here for everyone, but also there's the mystery of what happened with Pike previously. And I guess I should have known that you were going to tie them together, but I loved the way that you did that, because it's about midway through that I had that realization. Oh, that's why you put such emphasis on that story, him telling that to Una at the beginning. And so, how did you craft it to fit together like that?
Well, I mean, it's a classic sort of thing where it's basic storytelling structure and mechanics. If you look at stories like this, particularly if you're looking at, let's say, a British mystery, or maybe any mystery for that matter, that has an A plot and a B plot. And somehow, inevitably, even though these two things seem like they're completely separate and they're telling two parallel stories with maybe some thematic links, somehow, inevitably, around the end of Act 3, they almost always do this. Mm-hmm. They mesh. And it turns out they're not separate stories. They're the same story. Or cases like, like detective shows like Bones or Elementary or whatever, where they're working parallel cases. And it always turns out, no, we're actually always working on the same case. It's always the same case. It happens every time. And yet it works, because then everything is thematically linked And it basically plays to what Aristotle would have referred to as unity of time, place, and action. You want to try and keep the story as compressed as you can in terms of compressed scale of time. The less time it takes to tell the story, the better. Compressed in terms of space. If you can keep it down to one tight location, that's best. And manner. Everything is about the same thing, even if it starts out seeming that they're not. Unity of time, place, manner. And so that was the basic principle I applied, and that's how, and I knew going in that I wanted all these things to eventually come together. I wanted them all to be part of the same story. And knowing, basically, I'd come up with sort of the mechanics of the disaster for the ship Providence at the beginning. I started with that and built from that. And then once I saw that and realized what I wanted to do with the Pike character, I'm like, well, those two things have got to come together. And it's also, it's that sort of perfect thing where at first you think the thematic connection is simply related to the location. He had a very bad experience here, and now there's another mission here. Is coming back here going to be how he salves his conscience? And it seems like the connection is the place. And you're prepared to accept that that's the one sort of jump you're expected to make, the coincidence you are being asked to accept for the foundation of the story. Then you find out, no, it's actually far more than that. But once you realize the role he played, you realize it actually makes perfect sense that fate has brought him back here for this. He was the cause of it, and he's going to be part of the solution to it.
Yeah, it's the exact thing I thought was like when they were getting sent back. I was like, well, this is quite the coincidence, that Pike's getting sent back, kind of the small universe syndrome or whatever. But yeah, as the story unfolds, it definitely makes the sense.
Yeah, his former CO on the Shadowlet, Scaliger, who is now the Admiral sending him on the mission. Scaliger knows exactly what happened here. He knows how important this was to Pike. And because he has been involved behind the scenes with Valkyria, with the operation to a certain degree, he knows that it's connected. He, on some level, is probably thinking this may be the only chance Pike is ever going to have for closure on this.
Yeah.
That's part of why he sends him.
Yeah.
Is that he knows Pike doesn't have closure, as he says to him very clearly. Maybe about half or 2/3 of the way through the book, he says, "You know as well as I do that wound never healed."
Yeah. Well, and I like to with Scaliger specifically too. He starts off, you almost think he's a badmiral, because he's kind of like, I don't care about your feelings, Pike. I'm sending you. That's an order. Just do it or whatever. And as Pike learns more, and as Valkyria reads him into the mission, at least to the level that she does, then he can confront Scaliger, and Scaliger's like, it wasn't my call to make. I had to keep you in the dark, but now that now we've got a good Merle or whatever.
And then of course at the end, you have to think, has he slipped back into Badmiral? He's like, we've got to capture the ship. I'm ordering you to arrest the ship. It's like, that's the whole point, was we were trying to get our hands on the tech so we could study the tech. And it has to come back to, at that point, again, the classic Star Trek argument, it's not ours to take. Mm-hmm. That is not a derelict ship. That crew is alive. That ship is intact. We have no claim to it. Also, in case you forgot, Admiral, this isn't Federation space anymore. After the Klingon War, the borders all changed. Remember? This is not a Federation protectorate. We have an interstellar treaty obligation to protect the sanctity of civilian shipping and transport through this system and this sector. I can't let you interfere with that ship. It's against the law. Therefore, your order is illegal, and no illegal order is valid. And that's why when Scaliger tries to end run him and tries to say, Ortegas, relieve Captain Pike of command, take command of Enterprise, and impound that ship, she just stands up and she says, no. And she waits a few seconds to add, sir. And then she sits back down. He's like, Pike, what is going on your ship? And that's when Pike has to lay it out for him.
Yeah.
But it's one of those classic sort of Star Trek moments where they represent the ideal future that we would hope we could evolve into, where people would obey not just the law, but also their conscience. That in a moment like that, you could trust someone who's been given the authority and the power that comes with a starship and has the discipline and the conscience and the moral center to know when not to use it, or to know when to use it for good, to know when the order you're being given should not be followed. Someone who knows, who has been trained, don't just blindly obey orders. There are times when you have to use your head and your heart, and you got to question authority. And that's part of what Pike learns here, is that his big mistake, the underlying foundation of the two big mistakes, the horse and then the destruction of Providence when he was second officer on Shadowlet, both came from the fact that he was trying to win the favor of a male authority figure. Mm-hmm. First his father, then Scaliger. Now he's got this opportunity where he's faced off with Scaliger. Scaliger is telling him to do something. He has the opportunity to do this thing, capture this ship, and deliver it to his male authority figure to win approval. And he's finally learned the lesson. He says, no, I'm not going to. It doesn't deserve to be. It's not ours to capture. It's not ours to take. And he basically forces Scaliger to go, all right, you're going to have some explaining to do when you get back to Earth. And Pike's like, I always do, sir. I always do. But Pike has finally learned it is more important to listen to your heart and your conscience than it is to seek the approval of others. External approval matters less than knowing in your heart that you did the right thing. That's the more important thing. That's the evolution he goes through. That's the lesson he learns. And that's his reward at the end, is that he does the right thing. He enables this crew to go home, setting right the mistake that he made years earlier. And although he can't in any way ever really undo the mistake he made as a boy involving the horse, what he has also learned is how to forgive himself, how to realize that some things are done without malice. And even if the outcome wasn't good, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to continue to beat yourself up over it. And so he atones for the one, and he forgives himself for the other.
Well, and he gets the redemption, too, knowing that for all intents and purposes, that mistake that he made 16 years ago that he thought cost 37 lives maybe didn't. It changed some lives for sure, but he...
well, technically it did, but it also didn't. It was Schrodinger's disaster.
Yes.
It happened and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
In 3 times.
Right. Yeah.
In the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah. But he also got to learn that lesson that I guess we've seen, Kirk deal with and Picard and all the other captains of, when they're dealing with the admirals or the brass, back on Earth, the captain's the one in the situation, and they have to make the decisions that are right. And it was nice to see Scaliger kind of saying, well, I mean, you're there, I'm not. So I guess, this is the way it has to be.
You're going to take the heat for it, Chris. Good luck. Yeah. But the other thing, too, that's, if you look at the episode that would have immediately preceded the action for this book, which would be the Salat Who Ate Its Tail, and you look at the conversation, like rewatch the conversation at the very end of the episode between Pike and Kirk. And Pike is, talking about the weight of command and the weight of decisions you carry with you. And then you think about the storyline of this book and like what we learn about his past and the guilt that he's still carrying. You can feel it. It suddenly adds a layer of subtext. If you've read this book and then you rewatch that scene, suddenly that scene feels like it's freighted with all of this past subtext, this story that Pike knows but isn't telling Kirk, that Kirk will never know, but that we're going to learn. And suddenly you feel the weight of that conversation as Pike is sharing it. You can tell now, you can feel it. This is a guy who carries the burden of mistakes, of decisions, of guilt. And that was another sort of inspiration, was sort of seeing that conversation on the page and then saying, okay, this is clearly a guy who's carrying something. And then I brought that into Ring of Fire.
And it's so interesting that the book deals not so much with, or not just the character stuff, which was great, but it also has some really cool like sequences. I would call them like visual sequences.
Set pieces,
yeah. The set pieces of particularly the scenes pulling the station out of the accretion disk. Like it's hard for me to visualize space stuff oftentimes, and this time I could see it in my mind's eye. And when you're describing the science that's happening, but also the action, and you're jumping back and forth between the stuff on the station, the stuff in the ship, revealing backstory.
It's like you're watching the movie.
Right, yeah. And so you had a lot of things to juggle with that, plus making sure that we understand the science stuff, which I felt was very, I very much understood it, and I don't usually understand the science stuff. So how did you make sure to make the action flow between those different set pieces, and then also make sure that the audience understood what you were describing?
Well, I mean, part of that comes down to the fact that I've been doing this for 30 some odd years. I started out also writing in TV and film, and I got my degree in film production and screenwriting. So my first sort of formal training as a writer was in screenwriting. So I learned to write in a visual medium. I learned to write in a very terse medium, one that, favors clarity. Because that's how screenplays and teleplays are written. They're written without a lot of excess verbiage. You've got to be able to say exactly what you mean, and you've got to be able to say it quickly and succinctly. It's got to be clear, but it's got to be short. Mm-hmm. And you want to just get to the point and move on. You don't write in details that aren't story important. You leave other things like that to the set designer, the costume designer. You don't describe every article of clothing. You just describe the character in general. He's a shabby man, unkempt. He looks like he hasn't had a shower in a week. And he looks like he hasn't slept in about the same amount of time. You leave the details of how to execute that to the production crew. In a novel, you got to get into a little more detail. The way I eventually learned over the years of writing novels, as I said, this was my 32nd novel for Star Trek, my 39th novel overall. It's just practice. It's trial and error. It's learning, for instance, that scenes that are more introspective, that are about dealing with emotions, getting to the truth of something, especially when a character is relating something from their past, like those early scenes in chapters 2 and 3 about Pike and the horse. There, you've got to be willing to just take your time. You've got to let it expand. You got to let the details happen organically, let them pull you into the story through empathy, and just let those scenes play out. Give them the room they need to breathe and become alive. But once you start getting into action, and you have to worry about action pacing, then the key is to keep the scenes short staccato bursts of action. You have any, there's not like there's a law that says you have to have X number of words to make it a scene. A scene is as long or as short as it needs to be on the page to do what the writer needs it to do. And once you've done it, if it serves your needs to break out of that scene quickly and go do something else, then that's what you do. So, for instance, some set pieces you want to live in them, like with the storage bay in the outer wing. Yeah. As it's collapsing, you've got these, multi-ton containers crashing through and destroying catwalks, and La'an and Mitkov and their prisoner are desperately trying to get out of this labyrinth alive. That's a fun set piece. You can see that happening on screen, and you can feel the subwoofer shaking the theater. Mm-hmm. And like in my mind, I'm picturing poor Enterprise with its, tractor beam trying to hang on to this station as it's getting pulled into the accretion disk, and it looks like a sparrow trying to hang on to a tractor-trailer truck in terms of the mass differential, and Pike just won't give up. And, of course, it's the same thing as a kid with a lasso trying to hold a horse that he doesn't have the strength or the experience to hold. Visually, it's the same thing. He's doing the same thing again. He's holding a horse that he can't control. And it's not till later when he comes up with that brilliant thought. The trick is I've got to go with the flow. I've been trying to hold it back. I should be using the strength of the current to get the momentum I need to pull it free. Go with the flow. Don't fight it. Don't fight the current. Use the current. So I sort of say basic principles of physics, and he figures out in the moment how to apply them to his benefit. And then, as you say, when you start cutting between scenes, it's about saying, all right, I need to impart this information here. And part of maintaining that sense of urgency is cutting out of every scene as quickly as you can, get to the next one, impart the next bit of information that can only come from this side of the story or from this character's point of view. And then the key is to get to wherever the scene takes you next should be a character who has the most to lose or the most important contribution to make. It's one of the two. Either take us to the person who is most in peril or the person who is most instrumental in fixing it. And just keep your focus building on that ladder until you resolve the sequence.
And I think the most, I called the last third of the book a full-on edge-of-your-seat thrill ride, because that's really, I mean, it doesn't really let off the gas then. And I think, you know, what you were just talking about there really remind me of that, the countdown scene when La'an and Metcalf and the prisoner are trying to run down, you know, the corridor to get, you know, because they're about to, you know, eject it. Yep. And I have never been on the edge of my seat like that, like reading this. I mean, I know that the characters are going to be fine. Like,
you know, La'an is going to make it.
La'an's going to be fine.
You don't know if Metcalf is making it out.
Right. You know, but yeah. And so you have that. And then I guess ending it, you know, there was a literal sigh at the end of, you know, when they make it out. It's just like, oh, thank God they made it. And then the button on the end of that scene where she's like, you know, we need to just sit here for a few minutes.
We've been running for our lives for 15 minutes. Can we just sit here for a minute, please? Yeah. Yes, sir. Of course, sir.
That was just prime Strange New Worlds.
It also echoes the set piece with the decompression attack that tries to blow them out into space, where after Spock, La'an, and Chapel have survived that, and they've been hit by all this flying debris that's left them all cut up and bloodied and tattered, and they're just sitting on the deck with their backs to the bulkhead, and Chapel says something like, you know, I guess we should, you know, summon medical assistance, and La'an says, well, technically that's your job, isn't it? And Chapel just has to go, oh yeah, sure, throw that in my face. Yeah. Thanks a lot. You know, so it's like, you know, they're back to equipping each other. Yeah. And what I love about that scene is that scene, it feels like it wraps up and sort of resolves the sort of emotional conflict that was brewing between the three of them. Chapel and, you know, La'an were never rivals. Like, we saw that even early in season 3. Like, at one point, Chapel was La'an was asking Chapel something about Spock, and Chapel's like, oh no, you're not one of them. And La'an's like, not bad. So they don't have like a high school lovers triangle sort of thing, but essentially Chapel, like I said, was worried that, you know, her friendship with Spock has, you know, been soured, that, you know, maybe he doesn't feel as strongly about their friendship as he once did. La'an wonders, you know, would he care as much about me as he does about Chapel? She thinks he values Chapel more than her. And then he's trying to just figure out, how do I keep my friend and build my relationship and not hurt either one? And then, you know, this decompression attack happens. He grabs the pipe, which we find out by the end of the scene, he's crushed a handprint into a metal pipe because he has Vulcan strength. He's hanging on to Chapel, and I think it's Chapel who catches La'an. So the three of them are like in this daisy chain of hanging on till the end, and it's only by working together that they save each other. And they think that, you know, obviously you think, oh, well, everything's hunky-dory now. And then the incident with Chapel being taken hostage happens, and Spock deals with that situation and beats the ever-loving shit out of that spy, and just rails on it. And, you know, he's completely blank as he's doing it. And you think, well, okay, technically it was perfectly logical. He's thinking in terms of, this is a Klingon disguised as a human. He's physically much more formidable. It takes more strength to subdue him. But is that really what was going on? Or was he just pissed that the guy put a weapon on Chapel and now he's giving him a beatdown?
Right.
And he's so savage about it that he scares the living crap out of La'an and Chapel. And now La'an and Chapel bond at the end of that scene going, have you ever seen Spock do anything like that? And the other one's like, no, I have not. I have never seen that before. And they're both freaked.
Yeah.
So,
and we do get to see Spock later in the original series, like when he's got emotions, he throws, you know, Chapel brings him his soup and he throws it out, you know, in the corridor or whatever. But doesn't beat anybody down quite like that. But
well, he does in the Kelvin timeline.
Oh, that's true. Yes, out of Kirk. Yes.
And we saw, like in TOS, you know, during Naked Time, he swats Kirk clean across a cabin.
Yeah.
Just whap. We've seen him, break out the beatdown, but again, not on this level where you have to wonder, is he really trying to turn that guy's skull into pulp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, another character I still have questions about, and I'm kind of curious on your take, is Pelia. Throughout this show, Carol Kane is obviously wonderful, and the character too is just really fun. But I have this. I'm unsure sometimes of her motives, and especially even here, and it kind of follows the same, thing that's going on throughout the actual the television show too. Is she actually being mean to Scotty? Is she trying to teach him a lesson, and bring out the best of him, or somewhere in between? Because we really get that a lot here.
Yeah, the thing is they start butting heads in season 3, and they do sort of lock horns a number of times. We see it more around the middle of the season. And of course, they sort of have to help each other and get on the same page in Salat, Who Ate Its Tail. They're starting to work together a little better, but she's still bugging him, as you see in episode 7 and episode 8. She still gets under his skin. And part of the premise here is that Pelia is not always consistent. Sometimes she seems like she wants things done by the book. She gets upset when people don't do it the way she taught them. This was not what I taught you at the academy. But then in the field, when it suits her needs, she improvises. She pulls things out of a hat. She, jerry rigs stuff all over the place when it suits her needs. So what I was thinking about here, the subtext of what's going on with her and Scotty, she sees the potential in Scotty. But she realizes that, although he's fine as he's improvising and jerry-rigging stuff, if he really wants to bloom, hit his full potential, realize everything he could really be, he needs more discipline. He needs more focus. He's got to learn to be able to do what he does, but in a structured environment so that he's not always forced to go into a chaos mode in order to accomplish something. She knows he's got to get refocused. So she comes up with this by the book bullshit. She doesn't really believe it. She herself doesn't practice it. She's never bought into it. You can see it in all the episodes. She clearly does not believe in by the book. So why is she pushing it on Scotty? Because she knows that's what he needs. That's what turns him into the Scotty we know in TOS. The guy who says, by the book, I cannot change the laws of physics. The cold start takes 30 minutes, Captain. He's that guy. He's that guy who knows the manual, knows the regs, knows all the specs. He's got all the blueprints. He does everything by the book, which becomes like one of those catchphrases once you get to the movie era. She drills it into him because she knows if I can get him to learn to function like this, he'll be twice the engineer he is now. So she's pushing him. And the way to push him is essentially to goad him, and that's where plus we also just needed a humorous subplot for the book, which is where we get the pepper eating contest. And part of what obviously I do it from Scotty's perspective because I feel like we're going to sympathize better with him. And part of my motivation for that was simply that I myself do not much care for spicy food. I just don't. It doesn't matter if it's spicy Indian food, spicy Asian food, Thai food, Mexican food, hot peppers. I can't eat them. I had a serious ulcer condition that nearly killed me 20 years ago. I can't eat that stuff. It will kill me. It will literally kill me. So I don't eat it. And I imagine Scotty, as a good Scotsman, born on haggis and beer and scotch and potatoes, he's probably not much for heavy spice. Most Scots aren't. At least, as a culture, they don't seem to have embraced it much in their cooking. So he gets goaded into this pepper thing because he doesn't want to look like a chicken. And this is how Pelia knows she's going to get under his skin and eventually be able to get him to rebel and do the thing she really wants him to do. But first, she's got to get him angry enough to do it. But along the way, I just get to have some fun with him, vomiting all over the place. Calling Sam Kirk a shag lip ditty because he's dying. He's trying to say something, but his tongue is swollen, so I have to write it as if he's got a lisp because he can't talk anymore. I got to have a little fun with it. And then, of course, without spoiling it for the readers, I get to have him get even. Yeah. He reaches his potential, and he gets even.
Yeah. And you have to have those moments when, especially because he feels like he's being bullied, he doesn't necessarily see it as a time for learning or anything, but the bullies kind of got to get their own, and and
that's part of where Mbenga comes in. He's like, I thought you were in on the joke. If Pelia knew how much harm she was really causing you, I don't think she'd be doing this.
Right.
All the same, I don't like seeing you get bullied, and I think maybe I can help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, Doctor, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's a little nod to Casablanca there.
Yeah.
I really liked the way that Ortega, as a number one, is a very different number one from, say, Una, in that she, sees things from the pilot's perspective. And I loved seeing her not understanding Pike's point of view and her being like, are you sure about this? And like I think I felt she pushes and questions Pike a whole lot more than the average number one would. And I found that really fascinating. I was like, you know what? I understand Pike's frustration that she keeps questioning him, but I also understand her perspective. Did you try to have more times that she pushed him and eased off, or did you kind of know from the beginning how often she would push him on that?
I knew the scene structure of the book from the beginning. And with Star Trek books and pretty much any licensed property, such as, say, Star Wars, 24, Battletech, whatever, you have to write a full outline with all of your scenes and all of your story points that has to be approved by the licensor before you write the manuscript. So I knew pretty much exactly what scenes I was going to write with the two of them, what their arc was going to be. And although it seems like she's annoying him and second guessing him at first, there is a point where he's watching her make the rounds of the bridge, person to person, station to station, making sure everything is ready. And he's like, she's going to be a hell of a captain someday. He is proud of her. He is a proud father. He is like the warm, loving paternal heart at the center of the Enterprise. And watching her is like, he's watching a daughter grow up. And he's like, she's going to be a great captain. And so he's got all this pride that he's feeling for her. And it was just fun to sort of write Ortegas as someone who, she's got all this potential. The more you ask of her, the more you're going to find she can do. She will rise to any occasion you throw at her. She has greatness within her waiting to come out. Someone just has to ask to see it. And so this is the beginning of that process. And it sort of hints at the fact that, although I don't know that it would fit with canon, I don't know what the writer-producers are going to do in seasons 4 and 5. But my sort of vision of it is 5-10 years down the line, Ortegas will have her own ship. Mm-hmm. 10 more years, Ortegas is a captain.
Captain Ortegas has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
It does. It sounds good. I like the sound of it.
Yes.
Yes.
I also love the visual of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my other favorite bits was just when it finally came to me, when I was plotting out, I'm like, how are they going to get out of this situation with the Klingon cruiser barreling down on them? And that's when I remembered, oh, yes, trilateral temporal symmetry. If there's a foreshock, there's got to be an aftershock. Ah. And the Klingons don't know about it because they weren't there for the foreshock.
Right.
Pike's going to lure them into a trap. I'm like, there it is. Thank you.
It all comes together.
It all comes together. And that's the beautiful thing is I didn't actually have that figured out at the outline. I just sort of had some sense that Pike would find a way out of this mess. The subconscious does its work as I'm writing the manuscript. And so I will find little bits of inspiration, turns of phrase, callback moments. And then like that, where I'm in the process, I will suddenly find the solution to a story wrinkle. And it's perfectly obvious. It's been there the whole time. It's completely organic. I just didn't have it at outline. I had to mentally experience the story in a linear manner in order for my subconscious to say, and what happens now is...
That's pretty great. I mean, I think, from start to finish, this this book really does what we want all tie-in fiction to do. It's got, it's got the great action set pieces that you want to see in a sci-fi story, but really, and I think as most of our discussion here is focused on, is the character work and the development that we get. It's clear that you care about the characters, and it's fun, this being your, I guess everybody's only had one shot at a Strange New Worlds book so far, but the voices of the characters are there, and I guess just to say that I really appreciate you taking the time to write in this, and as we always say, we know you love it, so we know you're going to take care with it. But yeah, this was just such a fantastic book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, as we wrap up here, I guess just any final thoughts that you want to share, and if you have anything that you can share that you're currently working on, and let our listeners know how to be in contact and follow you.
Well, I can't say too much about what I'm working on presently. It's under contract, but it hasn't been announced, so I have to wait for the publisher. Mm-hmm. I do have an original short story coming out in an anthology that's coming out next year, but I don't know that that's been announced. So the editor is Henry Hertz. I think it's going to be with Blackstone Publishing. I'll have to double check that. So next year I should have an original short story and a new novel out. Obviously, depending on when you see this, if it's before November 3rd, new episodes of Star Trek Koan continue to come out through Monday, November 3rd. That'll be it. It's a 9-episode self-contained miniseries. So once that's out there, it's out there. It's free to listen to with ads. And Kirsten Beyer and I had a really good time working together, scripting that and developing that. And I'm hoping it'll get good numbers for listeners to sort of persuade the powers that be to make more of these Star Trek audio dramas, these full cast, full music, sound effect audio dramas like old radio plays, because I would really like to write a few more of them. I have ideas for some more. I think Kirsten does as well. I would love another chance to write one of these series with Kirsten, just because it was such a great learning experience and working experience to collaborate with her. So I would like to do that again. So I'm hoping to do more of that. So check out Star Trek Koan, bump its numbers up, tell your friends, tell your family, give copies of the Strange New Worlds book, Ring of Fire, give them as gifts. They make lovely gifts for the Star Trek fan or the reader in your life, or for people whose tables have legs that are about this much off. Yeah. So do that. And if you want to find me online, you can find my website. That's davidmack.pro. That's David Mack, MACK.PRO. And you can find me on Blue Sky. That's my microblogging site of choice at the moment. I'm there as David Mack. I have a work-only feed called davidmack.pro on there. And that's just stuff, work announcements, book announcements, new publications, links to reviews, stuff like that, free of my usual spouting of political nonsense and my raging about the events of the day. That's on my main account. So if you don't want to deal with that bull crap and you just want to have a feed that occasionally tells you, oh yeah, I have a new book out, follow the davidmack.pro account. But if you find it amusing when I go off on tangents and rant and yell and use my New York vocabulary, by all means, follow the regular account. So whatever suits you, whatever floats your boat, I got something for everybody.
It's nice following authors who have such colorful things to say about current events.
Yeah,
I may also separate them out.
Yeah. Actually, I'm also considering changing the handle. So it's currently David Mack on Blue Sky. It may change to davidmack.com on Blue Sky, and that'll be my primary account. Davidmack.pro will be the work-only account. Gotcha. But for now, it's still David Mack, and it's pretty easy. If you look up David Mack on Blue Sky, you'll get me, you'll get the Kabuki guy, you'll probably get the BuzzFeed political writer guy, and maybe a few other people. But that should be about it for now. But it's pretty easy to figure out which one is me. First of all, you're looking at me, and my photo's on the damn thing. So if it doesn't look like this, it ain't me. Second, it's pretty clear. You click in, and in between the bouts of rage, you'll see lots of posting about Star Trek. That's probably me.
Nice. Well, Yes, everybody be sure to check him out. Check out Star Trek Con and pick up a copy of Ring of Fire. And thanks so much again, David, for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah. It's been great being here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I don't know about you, Jonathan, but I think that was a fantastic discussion that we just had with David Mack.
Absolutely, he's so easy to talk to. We just get him going, and we had way more questions we had planned out, and he just started answering them. We were like, we haven't even shared these with you.
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to talk and get some of that backstory that, you know, I haven't seen that anywhere, you know, the submarine or, you know, just any of these things, like super interesting, and just tells you how much, you know, research a person's got to do to write one of these books. And but I think you know, we generally don't share our exact thoughts with the authors when they're on, just because that might get a little awkward. But, you know, of course, we couldn't help but gush over this book because I think for both of us, it was that good. Yes, it was. Like, if you haven't read our reviews for it, you know, I think even Matthew on Goodreads put, like, this is exactly what Strange New Worlds fans have been wanting and asking for. Like, this is that book. Like, we're not just hyping it because we got to talk to David. This is truly an amazing book.
And at least in my opinion, at least, this is, I think, his. And now, of course, I've not read all 32 of his Star Trek books, but of the ones I've read, this is the best one since his book in the fall.
Yeah. And this is now one of my new, like, favorite Star Trek books. This is just a perfect standalone story, you know. So, anyways, as we continue gushing, Jonathan, where can people find you?
They can find me on YouTube at Jonathan Koan. Also, my Twitter, or X or Twix, is Jonathan Koan, and my Goodreads is also Jonathan Koan.
And I am on Goodreads and Letterboxd, which has nothing to do with this show, but I'm there too, at both places, at Knitting Trekkie. And I'm also poking around on Facebook and different forums, usually just lurking. But you can also check out my blog. I've got a blog called bookbusterreviews.com. That's BOOK. It's like Blockbuster, like Blockbuster Video, but it's bookbusterreviews.com. And I'm playing around with a YouTube page here.
Yes, everyone help me bug him to get started on that.
Here's the thing. I've recorded about 50 takes of an intro video, just a couple minute thing. I'm just trying to get myself used to, you know, doing the on camera thing and not sound so rehearsed or whatever. But I've got outlines and everything for multiple videos to start with. So I'm hoping to start getting something up, but by the end of 2025. Because my first book review that I'm going to do is holiday related. So, but then have a bunch of videos because my busy season at work starts in January. So I got to have enough videos to really kind of keep them going for, you know, couple a month or something for a little while. So anyway, nice. It's in the hopper. I've like I said, I've practiced in front of the camera. Now it's just a matter of, like, doing it more. Yes. So, and that will be, and I do have a channel. There's nothing on it. Jonathan is a subscriber to my channel.
The first subscriber.
Bookbuster Reviews on YouTube. So. Anyway, enough of that. We'll let our listeners go. We've been rambling long enough today. And I do want to say to everybody, thank you for listening. And until next time, live long
and read on.
What do you call that, light reading? To each his own, number one.